We finally have action in the NBA offseason, and it's getting really spicy leading into the draft. Mikal Bridges has been traded from the New York Nets to the New York Knicks, and it got really interesting because the payout was heavy for both sides, and it puts both teams right where they want to be. My name is Wraith Hoops. If this is your first time checking out the content, I cover as much NBA basketball as possible. Go ahead and drop any suggestions for content below, and I'm going to cover this trade as best as I can without taking up too much of your time. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this one. So this is the first time we're seeing a situation where four of the biggest players on a roster, arguably, are all from the same university and all come from that same era of basketball in the university. Those players being obviously Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges. You also have Josh Hart and Donte DiVincenzo, and they together make up the Villanova Boys, who were all at the University of Villanova, which is considered a blue blood school, but they're not necessarily known for creating the same level of talent as your Dukes, your Chapel Hills, and your Kentuckys and teams like that. At the same time, they won at the highest level of basketball in college, and they were hoping to bring those winning ways to the NBA. And slowly but surely, Leon Rose with the New York Knicks has been making small plays here and there, throwing the dice out and making timely decisions to bring together the best culmination of talent that he has available to him. And right now, he's blessed the New York Knicks fan base with Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, arguably OG Anunoby because they are stoutly attempting to re-sign him, along with Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, Mitchell Robinson, and maybe Isaiah Hartenstein. It just depends on how much money they have left over and how much he's willing to sacrifice in order to stay with the roster, or if they decide to make a trade to kind of even things out a little bit. Regardless, that is an absolutely disgusting combination of potential players. And when you take into the account that they didn't lose any players in the deal, they added on Mikal Bridges, and then they also have Julius Randle coming back and being healthy next year because he wasn't even a part of this season's postseason heroics. And you have a disgusting 8-9-man rotation that could put Tom Thibodeau in the position of where he actually runs regular minutes for everybody for once. Because as we know, he's been known to run guys for 40, 42, even 48 minutes if you happen to be the Josh Harts of the world, just because he wants to see how much he can get out of his top guys. And he thinks that there's a significant drop off between his first guys and the guys beneath them. In that same vein, though, it's going to be interesting to see if Mikal Bridges can actually maintain his streak of having played every game in his NBA career, because even going back to seasons past where he was traded from the Suns to the Nets, he played every game that year as well. So that's going to be interesting to keep tabs on. And I would bet the under because I do think that Tom Thibodeau will find a way to make him miss a game. But that's a story for a different day. The most important thing to understand is that Sean Marks finally did his big ones for the New York Nets. We remember the failed Big Three era. Obviously, you had the one before when they had your Paul Pierce and your Kevin Garnett. But they had one more recently that just flamed out. And it was the one that had Steve Nash as the head coach. You had Kevin Durant, you had James Harden, you had Kyrie Irving, and that never saw things come to fruition. You ended up trading away Kevin Durant and got 4 first-round picks in exchange. And then you got 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, giving you roughly 16 picks heading up through 2031, and you still have some more assets that you can trade away. If you want to send off maybe a Cam Thomas, a Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton is probably gone in this offseason as well, but you have the opportunity to make even more plays. And since you are now making a deal after that trade with the Houston Rockets in order to get back your first round pick for next year in 2025, you're really in full on rebuild mode, which is finally lovely because they have a general direction for where they want to go and they know what they're planning to do with everything. I say that because this past season they had Mikal Bridges, they obviously had a couple other talented players. They had Ben Simmons until he was in and out of the rotation. But they were kind of deciding where they wanted to go. Did they want to be competitive? Did they want to try and build around Mikal Bridges, bring in a couple of other players as the seasons progressed with the draft capital that they had on hand and the players that they had on hand? Or did they want to go ahead and send away Mikal Bridges? Because remember, they were offered 4 first-round picks by the Memphis Grizzlies this past season, and everybody thought they were crazy because they turned it down. Well, guess what? 5 is bigger than 4. Now, granted, I think that the Knicks picks are going to be worth a little bit less just because they are making the win now of all win now moves and the biggest win now move, biggest move period in the Leon Rose era for Knicks basketball. But at the same time, they're first round picks nevertheless, and things got really interesting for them as a result. To break it down into the most specific parts, the Knicks were sending their first round picks unprotected for 2025, 2027, 2029, and 2031. They're also sending a protected Milwaukee pick for the first round in 2025, and then a 2028 unprotected pick swap and a 2025 second round pick. In exchange, they get Mikal Bridges, the 4th Villanova boy, collecting them like Infinity Stones, and then a 2026 second round pick, which is a very interesting pull, but I'm wondering what the idea was behind that one. Nevertheless, they got better. They didn't give up any players. They gave up draft picks that weren't going to mean very much for them in their particular rotations, and they're primed to deal with the Boston Celtics in that Eastern Conference. The Nets actually ended up following up this trade, as I said, with the Houston Rockets, and the most important part of it is the fact that Houston is surrendering the opportunity for their pick swap with their own or OKC's first round pick for the Brooklyn 2025 first round pick, really giving their first round pick in the first season of their official rebuild mode in years. Because after the Kevin Durant era, they kind of were middling in the road, trying to figure out what was going on, where they wanted to go, trying things out, seeing what worked, what didn't. And now they have a definite direction and their own pick. Now, admittedly, they don't have all their picks that they originally would have had, because that would be even more delicious for them and their front office and their fan base, because then not only are you probably going to be losing games for the foreseeable future for a couple of years, but you're also going to have the opportunity to do the most with your own picks. Unfortunately, somebody else is going to be benefiting from those, similarly to, as you saw, the Celtics ended up benefiting in the world where they got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum off of Nets picks in trades previously. But all things come around and go around. The 2025 first round pick is going to be very important for them in particular, because the 2025 draft is supposed to be more top heavy, obviously spearheaded with Cooper Flagg, who's currently going to be attending Duke for college for his lone season, most likely, obviously, along with a star-studded cast at the top part of that draft lottery, which is going to be a lot denser than what we're seeing for this season and today, most likely, if you're watching this video the day of the post for the 2024 draft. And it's just honestly going to give them the most opportunities to do what is necessary for the roster and for the organization as a whole going forward. One thing that I did find to be very interesting is the fact that the Knicks actually had no desire to send Bridges over, but he effectively, with himself and his camp, told them, hey, not gonna lie, if you don't send us there, we're gonna go out publicly and say, hey, everybody, we only want to go to the Knicks, right? I only want to play for the Knicks. I don't want to play for anybody else. And effectively just tank his trade opportunities to the point where the Knicks know they don't have to give up as much. But in good faith, the Nets decided to accommodate him, and they got a pretty massive haul as a result. So much so that I would be willing to say that for the Nets already, this is an A+ trade. Obviously, we don't know what their picks are going to officially turn into, but when you get 5 for a guy like Mikal Bridges, who you already got back in a trade for Kevin Durant, along with 4 first-round draft picks, along with Cam Johnson, who can possibly be traded for a first-round pick in and of himself, depending on what team he goes to, you have done a tremendous job and a tremendous justice to yourself and for your organization. As a result, you're going to see a lot more interesting things come from them. I think they're going to offload a couple more players instead of just running out the next season. They're obviously going to get a little bit younger, even though they weren't terrifically old to begin with. And the Knicks themselves aren't old. Nobody in their key members of the rotation is over 30. The oldest is Julius Randle, and to be honest, he's not that old. He's 27, 28 in that range. So you still have a healthy number of years to try this thing out. And while last season, yes, they did a great job, and honestly, they were really giving the Celtics a run for their money before their injuries started to kick in, and they were already hampered because they never had Julius Randle to begin with. Instead of just deciding, we're going to be comfortable, we're going to run things back, they decided we're going to get better. We have to get better. Yo, Mikal, come here. And so through the power of friendship, as some people are calling it on Twitter, I think that it is very likely that they do end up being a favorite and a front runner going into next season, even though the Celtics aren't going to be losing anything this offseason, because I just don't think that they have the necessary depth to handle a healthy Knicks team. If the Knicks aren't healthy, then the Celtics will have the same opportunities to do what they did this season, where key players for every team they played up until the finals was missing. That said, let me know what you guys think about this trade for the Knicks. Even though they gave up a tremendous amount of draft capital in exchange for Mikal Bridges, to me, it makes sense. And for that reason, I'm willing to give them an A or an A-. In order for them to get an A+, they have to complete the job and get a championship. If they don't end up winning any rings after making this trade, and they just kind of hover in that conference final second round range, then I'm willing to say that this is more of a B level trade. It's still a good trade nevertheless, because you're going to be great for the foreseeable future. But if you don't capture that ever elusive ring, you're going to get clowned on. Similarly to the Boston Celtics, if they never ended up getting a ring and ended up still giving Jaylen Brown that massive contract, that $300 million that no player in NBA history has ever seen before. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, I'm interested to hear what trades do you think are likely to come as a result of this one. I know that Larry Markkinen has a price that has now been set because him and Mikal Bridges were considered by many NBA executives as being in the same tier of value as far as trade compensation would go. But that still remains to be seen, and that's a topic for another video. That being said, if you appreciated this one, go and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, become a member to help support the content. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter and follow me on Instagram. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.